We were on vacation and suddenly couldn't read signage. I can't rent cars. I'm having to magnify resume. But ultimately, it was determined that I had an autoimmune condition, a genetic condition called autoimmune retinopathy, and no cure. And the only thing that they could do was to try to slow down the train wreck. I suddenly realized the loss of my vision did not define who I was, whether more or less.
Yeah.
Suddenly, I had to ask for help. That swallow the ego, the pride. I can do this. No, you can't. You're going to have to ask. The greatest emotional impact was I was an extremely impatient person.
Yep.
I had to take a big dose of patience. I had to fight rough battles trying to get them to consider people with disabilities. We are employable. Let me dispel all those myths that you think that we cannot do.
A green tinted screen and braille lettering pops up that turns into the white Lighthouse of Houston logo. The Sightless Voices Unleashing Potential cover art pops up on screen. There's a flash, then clips of Jennifer's eye, her walking down the hall, and reading braille appear. A montage of clips from episodes of the podcast begins with Jennifer talking to our guests and smiling. It zooms in on the Sightless Voices Unleashing Potential cover art.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Sightless Voices Unleashing Potential. I am your hostie with the mostie, Jennifer Parrish, and today we're going to be chatting with Miss Sara Freeman-Smith. Sarah's an inspiring author and community advocate who is passionate, knowledgeable, and extremely involved in the blind and low vision community. Sara has faced vision loss and has become a beacon of hope and leadership. And so today she's going to share her remarkable journey with us. As always, guys, before we get started, we're going to describe the set. We are sitting in blue chairs. We have blue lights, a neon lighthouse sign, and a white brick background. And I did it out of order that time just to make sure y'all were paying attention. Sara, thank you so much for paying attention. For paying attention. Thank you so much for being here today, Sara.
Oh, absolly. And I'm paying attention.
And
too.
you're paying attention.
Yes,
Good.
absolutely.
Hopefully everybody is now. See, there we go.
There we go.
Awesome. Okay. Well, let's start by, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your vision loss journey?
Sure. Actually, I did not lose my vision or begin to lose my vision until mid-career, late 40s or so. I have always been in the recruiting leadership arena. And what happened is we were on vacation and suddenly couldn't read signage. And I'm thinking, well, I wore glasses, but not super powerful kind of things. So I figured it's time to get an upgrade of some glasses. And I went to my optometrist and he stated, oh my gosh, Sara, you've had significant sight loss in your left eye. Did you have some trauma? Did you have an accident, fall, or have you been sick? Notice any none of the above. So he immediately referred me to some specialist who also had no answers, totally clueless. I was perfectly healthy, no indications of any type of common eye conditions that would cause one to have an immediate vision loss. And also during that same time, I'm in corporate America and I received a significant promotion and decided to go to grad school just before I got the promotion. So I'm in graduate school and the promotion would require about 85% travel across the country with a team of about 18 recruiters. And I'm going, and I am having problems reading signage. I can't rent cars. I'm having to, magnify resumes. So 2 to 3 years later, it was finally discovered after numerous medical examinations from lumbar punctures, MRIs, CAT scans, all of the above came back negative. But ultimately, it was determined that I had an autoimmune condition, a genetic condition called autoimmune retinopathy, and no cure. And the only thing that they could do was to try to slow down the train wreck, which would ultimately lead to my total blindness. So each year there would be a loss, gradually, and then dump. And so fortunately, they did have me start taking immune suppressant medication similar to what transplant patients would take. Because essentially what your body is doing is your good cells is attacking a portion of, a particular organ. And in that instance, it was my retina.
Your retina.
And that did slow it down. But now I'm at about 95% vision loss. I see shapes and forms, no color, no obvious, depth perception, things of that nature. But I continue to work, however, but it took me a minute to get off that Propel party because I was obviously totally devastated. Here I am, a mother, wife, involved in the community, active in my church, and suddenly, what do you mean I can't see?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I live in Houston. There's got to be a pill or drop or something.
Right.
You
This
know?
is the
I mean,
most
come on,
best
can we
medical
just fix
center
this thing?
in the world.
You know,
Let's go.
And
Yeah.
no, there was nothing. So that's how I started the journey. But I tell people it's especially for people who suddenly lose their vision loss. It's going through stages of grief.
Yep.
And the shock, and then you go into the anger and the denial. Fortunately, I didn't stay in depression that long because I suddenly realized my vision, the loss of my vision did not define who I was, whether more or less. I'm still Sarah, but it took me a minute because it was like, how in the world am I going to do this? And, most of us are, being an independent person and the helpers. Suddenly I had to ask for help, and that was a huge blow because that swallowed the ego, the pride. I can do this. No, you can't. You're going to have to ask for some help. So that's what started me on my journey.
So this must have been pretty recent, right? Like this is.
Well, no, I would probably say it's been over a period of 20 years.
Okay.
Believe it or not, a lot of people think I may be a little bit younger than
I was gonna say, you seem very
no,
young.
I'm not. I got some years. But what it did allow me, because I was in human resources and recruiting, after I got up and said, okay, it's not why me, why not me, learn to use and focus on what you can do, then learning how to, ask for those right accommodations. But then I suddenly realized, my gosh, there's a lot of other people out there that aren't blessed and fortunate enough to know how to ask, how to advocate, and what type of accommodations they need, especially from a vision impairment. So that started me on my quest, so to speak.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear all of y'all's stories. Like when folks come in here, so I have had sight loss all my life. I was born this way, and so I can see a little bit out of left eye and a little bit more out of the right. And it's not. I read Braille. I'm reading Braille right now. Right. So it's just remarkable to hear y'all like and from the other side, like losing it later. I mean, it's got to be just emotionally crazy.
Absolutely.
But
when you look at sensory loss, who is going to elect to lose their vision?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the worst.
Not
Next to
it,
the
says
fear
everyone.
of dying. I mean, no, I'll do everything else, but let me have my sight.
Absolutely. What were some of the emotional challenges you faced, and then how did you overcome them?
Well, as I stated, my biggest emotional challenge was learning how to ask for help, but also understanding that I could still do some things. I had to do workarounds. The other emotional aspect is feeling like, what are others going to think of me because they know me in the other form? Sarah was able to do this, and now think of it, from a recruiting, you look at body language.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's more powerful than your words.
Right.
And then suddenly, I can't tell if you're giving me that crazy look because I asked you that question. So I have to rely on more of those senses and things of that nature.
That's interesting that you say that.
It was an adjustment, but then everything else kind of kicks in because then it caused me to learn to be a better listener.
Yes.
And most importantly, I think the greatest emotional impact was I was an extremely impatient person, type A personality, all over the place right now. Yep. I had to take a big dose of patience.
Yeah. Yes. And it's so interesting that you bring up the recruiting stuff because I just acquired a position here as a hiring manager a couple of years ago. And I wish very much that I could just like see somebody's body language.
See that. You could pick it up. You ask the question. And they're looking all up in the ceiling. Okay, you're trying to find the answer for me, right?
Exactly.
So you have to, and unfortunately, you have to go with your gut.
Right.
That second sense says,
yes.
I don't think they were expecting that question. And so I'm not sure if I got the real deal.
Yeah, it's really taught me how to listen to my gut.
And you have to, you really do have to listen to the tone versus having that body language. Because again, that will send some messages as well.
Right, and I noticed listening for like shuffling or
Exactly.
like
Squirming.
squirming.
Yes. Squirming,
There you
yes.
go.
Yeah.
If
Oh,
we got
yeah.
yes,
Exactly.
So
Exactly. Yes.
that's really cool that anyway.
Yeah. It is.
You were
It
able to
is.
maintain
Yes.
doing that too. So how did your journey lead you to become involved with the blind and low vision community?
Well, because again, a part of me being Sarah, I've always loved helping people, and recruiting was that avenue because not only, as I later learned, so many people would come back and say, thank you so much. You did more than not hire me. You told me what I needed to do to go about getting hired. So what I realized is that if I struggled initially trying to figure out how to ask for those accommodations and then selling it to my peers and my manager. Because again, they know me as the sighted Sarah.
Yep.
And suddenly I didn't want, and I hid that for a short time, not telling them the significance of my vision loss. My IT team was my best partners. I mean, I was in large and font till it looked like the side of a billboard or something.
Yep.
And they're going, but you can't read the email. You got 3 letters on the screen, Sarah. Okay. I go, okay, I got to tell these. I got to tell them.
Right. It is time.
It's time.
Yeah.
But allowing them to digest that, but to say, I can still do this. I'm just going to need some accommodations that I know that are reasonable. And then they said, okay, because you were good at, so you didn't change. It didn't suddenly, I didn't know how to recruit anymore. So I needed to go out and target and help other people as well as on both sides of the coin, because here I am, an employer. I had to fight rough battles trying to get them to consider people with disabilities. I was constantly, and I have to admit, a lot of them I did not win because, again, if that hiring manager felt like, oh no, this person is not going to make an impact, then there was only so much I could, navigate. So I wanted to find organizations that I could partner with to see how I could share some of my insights, give someone that extra boost from an individual looking for a job, but also help partner and work with companies to say, hey, we are employable. Let me dispel all those myths that you think that we cannot do. Let me show you. As my mother, as growing up, always used to say, I can show you better than I can tell you.
Exactly.
So let me show you. I'm the same person that responded to your email, but it took me maybe 20 minutes because I had to let my screen reader go through it and make spell checks.
Exactly.
But I responded.
Yep.
And you would have never known.
Yep.
So you need to give me extra time. Don't say I need this ASAP in 5 minutes where you could walk in, I could skim a resume, boom, I have an answer.
Yeah.
But I still have that answer, but it's just going to take, okay.
Yeah.
So that's where I started early on looking. I went to the mayor's office for people with disabilities and started attending their meetings. Found out they had an employment committee, and it was like a fish in some fresh water.
I
jumped
bet.
right into it.
Oh,
yes.
wow. That's awesome.
So that's what got me started.
So speaking of organizations, what sort of organizations are you involved with, kind of in and out of the blind and low vision community?
Yes. Oh,
Quite a few.
quite a few.
Here comes the list.
Quite a few, yeah.
Yes.
But
That's good.
probably the most important is Haven, Houston Area Visually Impaired Network, which is an umbrella organization
Yes.
for so many of the blind and visually impaired community support organizations. So that's why I feel like I've got my hand in all of these organizations, but I represent as a board member iBug, which is Eye Blind Users Group.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
of course, it's not just iPhones now, it's Androids and Alexa devices and all those other kind of wonderful things. So, but iBug, I'm also a member of Houston Council of the Blind Visually Impaired Network, Blind Professional Network, and I think I'm missing maybe one others, but anyone that I feel that I can make an impact in, participate in, they can count me in. So
I love that.
That's what I try to do. And then, of course, I was on the commission for the mayor's office, but I rolled off after 4 years of working with them as well.
That's impressive.
Yes,
Very nice.
absolutely.
And on top of all that, Miss Sarah is an author.
Oh, yes.
So let's talk about that. Let's get into that.
Okay.
So so what motivated you to pursue a career as an author?
Well, let me give a backdrop to that story. Actually, my first book was self-published about 25 years ago while I was still actively fully sighted in the recruiting arena. Because again, I grew up in Houston in the inner city, and was fortunate enough to get a scholarship, ride scholarship to the University of Southern California.
Nice.
And I came back as a Trojan and started getting involved with my alumni and saying, there's other diamonds in the rough. And so I would go and recruit to the untraditional areas for my companies, because I felt like these are the underserved populations that everybody is just dismissing, when I know that they're talented people, but they need to know what they need to do to be equipped and enabled to work. So that led me to, I would share my testimony, and I would, encourage individuals. I'm going to halfway houses, people that had just recently been released from prisons, women, unwed mothers, welfare to work programs, all sorts of places. And so they said, you really should share your story and write a book. So I wrote a book called Turning Stones into Gems, Learn How to Find Purpose in Your Life and Career, which started with my own personal testimony, but more importantly, telling people God put us all on earth for a distinct purpose. And if you just home in on your passion, it doesn't feel like work.
Yep.
You love what you do, and you're not stressed, and you're not going, oh my gosh, I can't pay these bills, but I hate this job, but I can't afford to do it, and on and on and on. So that was 25 years ago. So I had wonderful success, self-published it, my husband and I wrote a second book called How to Self-Publish and Market Your Own Book, because people wanted to know, how did you take this little cookbook-looking book and turn it into, a really nice, book that's in libraries and, Amazon and all over these places. So we shared those inside tips. So I tabled that career because I was, again, still actively involved in the corporate world, but then pandemic occurred, and some people sought me out from LinkedIn, from just personal, travels, and said, did you ever write another book? We need that book, because so many people have now changed careers after the pandemic, but they don't want to go back and do what they're doing. They want to do something more impactful. So that led me to update the book and self-publish it. So it's in its third edition. And then also we're updating our How to Self-Publish and Market Your Own Book as well. So that's what started me kind of reigniting my writing journey.
Let's talk about your writing process. So how has it changed? Obviously, now there's technology, and now you're visually impaired / blind. So let's go from writing as a sighted individual to now.
Significant changes, a lot of time.
Oh, yeah.
It takes a lot of time.
Yes.
I use two methods. One, I love, voice memos, just press record, something that if I have some thoughts, I can immediately speak it and then transcribe it and then send it to myself and kind of clean it up. But primarily I write just sitting on, opening up the laptop and just opening up a blank Word document and start flowing from there. But once you get all of the thoughts, or for me, I get all of my thoughts, then it's sitting down and trying to figure out, putting them, in somewhat of a sequential order, and then going, at that point, it needs to be edited. Even though you think felt like you've given birth to a child, that I finished this,
of course.
But it's no way, it's not nearly finished. So you need to invest in professional editors, because just because my best friend is an English teacher does not equate to an editor for a book, and especially the type of book that you're writing. So it can be quite laborsome, but then I had sight, so I could kind of graphically, when I first wrote the book, know how to lay it out. I had to, again, rely on the graphics from a professional to say, but this needs to be laid out a certain way, and then being able to trust them that it was, laid out in a manner that was professional. So you have to rely on a lot more of the expertise of professionals as well to produce a good quality book, both from a visual perspective, but then from my blind and visually impaired audience as well, making sure your book is in various formats.
Correct.
Back then,
accessible.
25 years ago, a good old paperback, hey, it was great. But now you've got Audible, you've got audio versions, you've got, ebooks, and obviously the paperback version. So, yeah.
What kind of tech do you use? Like JAWS? Do you use a screen reader?
Actually, I use a screen reader. I have JAWS, but I love NVDA. I very rarely go jump on JAWS. I have it on my computer, but I love using NVDA. Yes,
interesting.
Absolutely. I've been using that for about, I guess, 6 or 7 years.
I've not heard anyone say that anymore, but I heard they're very similar. I've never used NVDA.
But All of the keystrokes, I'd
Are the
probably
same,
say
right?
are about 90% all the same.
Yeah, that's cool.
Absolutely.
What are some of the key themes or messages in your books that you hope to convey to your readers?
Well, the primary premise is understanding that you have a unique purpose, and sometimes it's not quite clear to some people. Others, it's very, very obvious, but they're hesitant, fearful. I'm not going to be able to earn a living, or I don't think I know how to make this happen. I want to start this business, and nobody's going. I mean, self-talk is our worst enemy, besides listening to other people that are negative. But our own self-talk, trying to convince ourselves why we couldn't do anything. I try to dispel that and give them a process. I have what I call a 6P process. It's about starting with prayer, meditation. You have to be still. You have to be quiet, and being able to listen and home in on saying, what is it I truly, if I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and wasn't having to worry about getting paid, what would I want to do? What would I want to spend the vast majority of my life doing? And then writing that down and saying, and what's stopping me from doing that? And then putting into place a plan, and then being able to have some passion behind that plan. And then patience. Patience is very important. That's the 4th P, and the perseverance. I had to persevere. I had so many obstacles, still even getting the 3rd edition published, but you figure it out and go, that didn't work, I got to find another workaround. And then the last P is being able to pull up others along the way with your success. And that's where I love giving back and pulling others, paving it forward for others. So
Beautiful.
absolutely.
Talk about your role in dispelling myths about hiring people with disabilities.
Well, I think what helps me is because I can be a credible source, because I can bring both sides of the table. Because when I did lose my vision back maybe 10, 15 years ago, when I left BP and they had the major layoff, I started interviewing, and then suddenly I know what it's like to have to advocate for yourself, and I did that and was able to successfully do that. And they look at the fact that I was in corporate America, I did have vision loss, I was able to successfully navigate it, but also being able to be honest and very brutally honest with my friends and peers that are visually impaired and blind, and say, look, I'm going to tell you, this is why we asked this question, and your answer you just bombed because you gave me too much information. There were so many times I wanted to go across the other side of the desk and say, you were doing great till you just kept going. You need to stop. And they go, I didn't know. And so being able to give those insights, I lend that credibility. So the HR managers can't dismiss me because I've got 35 plus years of experience and with some major companies. And the individual sitting there talking to me saying, I've hired thousands of people. Trust me. When I tell you I wouldn't hire you, and this is the reason why I wouldn't hire you, I couldn't tell you that if I was working for a company. I just simply say we've found someone else with, much more, experience and things. So that allows me to navigate those waters a little bit better.
Absolutely. So many of you may or may not know, but the unemployment rate in the blind and low vision community is enormous. Like it's something like 97%. It's awful.
Well, they vary with the numbers, but it is huge.
But it's
huge.
undeniably huge.
Yes.
So what are some of the challenges faced by blind or low vision individuals in terms of employment?
Well, there were so many factors, but the primary ones that I think stand out, first of all, is transportation.
Yes.
Because some cities, it's horrible to try to navigate, and especially if you're blind and they have a poor paratransit system.
Small town America.
Small town. 3 Lyft and Uber drivers, who knows, whatever that may be. So transportation barriers are huge. And then the other, several other aspects, the lack of being able to find the jobs, because most of the websites, a lot of them are not accessible. So it doesn't mean that they might not be open to hiring you, but I can't even get the application in. And of course, you have to deal with the dispelling of the myths from a company standpoint. Then there's also the factor that a lot of blind individuals only want to work part-time if they are on SSI, because that's a significant barrier, because I have the health benefits. I'm not so sure if I go and leave this. And so again, sometimes our system kind of puts handcuffs on
Exactly.
individuals because it's a crucial decision. But at the end of the day, would you much rather make more money and still have that benefit coverage versus being dependent on the governmental healthcare benefits and subsidies? So
Absolutely.
that's that other aspect and factor. And then the fact that when you're blind and visually impaired, most of the time you don't know others that are working. So that social and work integration aspect. How do I get around if I'm in that office setting? And the biggest challenge, and I have to be honest with you, is the lack of technology knowledge.
Right.
They have to not just know the basics of a keyboard, but you have to know the ins and out of all of those Microsoft products, those Google Workspace. I mean, you can't be sitting there asking them, how do I do this?
Yes, exactly.
You've got to come prepared. So that means you've got to get the adequate training. And that's another story, adequate training on,
Yes.
from that aspect. So those are just a few of those factors
Yeah.
that are prohibited.
Because ultimately, a blind individual will sometimes have to educate their employer.
Oh, no, it's
You
not
know,
a sometimes.
I mean,
it's all the time.
Right, unless you're working here.
Unless you happen to
know.
work for somewhere that has a ton of, visually impaired and blind individuals.
Exactly.
No, it's a constant education.
Sure, and
Because
so-
again,
right.
with so many advents of technology, they just don't know that they don't know. And so before I get upset with that person saying, they're clueless, I
Right.
take the approach, I'm coming in, I'm the elephant in the room. So let me whip out my phone and explain. I'm not doing social media here. My phone has my notes. I have my Bluetooth here. So I am ready so I can refer to some of the notes and some questions that I have that during the course of the interview. And they go, oh, okay, all right. And then I go, this is how I do it.
Yep.
And then they go, oh, because I know you're sitting there going, how is she going to do? This is how I do it. And if there is something, you may see me sitting here typing if I'm really good, which I'm not at that point. But what if I had a braille display or something? I could take some quick little notes so that, hey, that guy said something that I want to ask that question later. So
Right.
this is how I do it. And then they suddenly go, oh. And I'm not interrupting you. You don't hear my screen. You don't hear my voiceover.
Yep.
That sort of thing. And they're going, I didn't even know that. I know you. So
And then O-tones to,
I
okay.
know. So then it opens it up. It certainly does. And then, obviously all the other tools that one can use when they're in the workplace. So
Yep. How has your leadership and advocacy work impacted the community, and what changes have you seen?
I wouldn't say necessarily how I have impacted it because I just do what I do, and I hope that I can make a difference in some of the things that I offer individuals. But a couple of things that come to mind is as I would visit my doctor every 3 or 4 months, we're in this huge lobby. All the patients were all at some point levels of blindness, but I'm sitting over there doing all these things on my phone or iPad. And when her, the nursing assistant, they're going, Sarah, what in the world are you doing? We know you can't even see the doggone icons over there. So what you doing on your phone? And I said, I'm reading my emails or I'm sending, text messages. And they're going, how do you do that? And so here, my doctor of 40 years, I'm giving them that education. And she said, shame on me. I never knew that. I know we have these resources, but you're telling me you can do all of this? She said, we need to tell not only our patients, but our doctors need to be informed. So
Exactly.
she took it upon herself. She just, as God would have it, she was the chairman of the board of Houston Eye Associates at
Nice.
the time, Foundation. And she started having, I partnered with iBug, of course, and we did seminars on Saturdays at their main office for patients and for physicians to come just to give them an overview of what you can do with your phone. And so many people, the caregivers came, the physicians came, the office technician. I mean, they were
cool.
totally blown away. So
yeah.
that was something we started prior to the pandemic. It kind of subsided and then it started picking back up, and then she retired. So hopefully we can kick-start that.
Yeah, hopefully you can keep it going. For a
Yes.
place like Houston Eye
Absolutely.
Associates, they should be,
Yes, it should be something
educated.
that they do on,
Yeah.
on a frequent basis
Correct.
because most people just don't know. So it's spreading the word there, and I'm going, well, I'm certainly glad that she took the initiative to ask, and I was able, to kind of spearhead and start those seminars. And just most recently, I just started doing some free seminars around local libraries to teach seniors, especially seniors who are technically challenged and visually impaired, hey, you have another life right here in your hip pocket or your purse with your smartphone.
Yes.
And just an hour just to say, I can watch, I can do TV, I can do what? It's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
being
yeah.
able to share that information
And
to
I bet
open up their eyes.
seniors are just
I had a
thank
group
you.
last week of about 25. They thought they died and gone to heaven.
Oh,
I'm going back. Do the Ray-Ban glasses. I'm going back. They
Nice.
just could not get enough. So I love that, being able to help others.
Yay. All right. Well, we're about to wrap up here, but and I want to thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your insights with
absolutely.
us today. It's been great. Like you're amazing.
Thank you.
I've
And
never
this
gotten to really meet you and talk
This
to
is
you.
a wonderful opportunity for me. And if the one golden nugget I'd love to share is if they visit my webpage, which is www.urgems.com, and that's U as in United, R as in Robert, GEMS.com. I have a disability resource page with a wealth of information for anyone, both from an employee, employer, organizations, that sort of thing, so that they don't have to wonder. So I kind of put it all together. That's a good start. Learn to advocate for yourself and get out there and just do it.
I love it.
Yes.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so inspiring to learn about all of the, the challenges that you've overcome and the positive impact you've made in the community. So thank you so much again for joining us. Yay.
Yay. I'm going to keep doing it. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Well, so to our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this episode and we hope you found it both inspirational and informative. Remember, you can find other episodes of Sightless Voices Unleashing Potential on our YouTube channel or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, guys, your feedback is much appreciated and encouraged. So we would love to hear from you and what you got to say about what we're doing and what you'd love to see. Be sure to follow the Lighthouse of Houston on social media for all kinds of updates on the exciting things that we're getting into this year. And until next time, take care of yourself and each other.